All right, welcome back. Hope you're having a great week. Today we're continuing our ABA exam review with our latest BCBA practice exam. We're going to go through the next set of questions together and break them down. If you're new to the channel, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. Please subscribe. If you're looking for our proven study materials, check out behavioranalyststudy.com. We offer 3 practice exams, a task list study guide, and of course our combo pack. Once this exam is complete, we will send that over to you. When you pass your exam, let us know so we can include you in our Sunday shout out. Other than that, let's work hard, study hard, get to our questions. 111. You own your own company as a behavior analyst. In the client contract, you state that you will provide services for 30 days if there are any interruptions in payment or funding for services. One of your families just hit the 30-day point and still are unable to provide payment. Do you, the behavior analyst, need to continue providing services? All right, ethical questions. We don't need to be stressed out about ethical questions as long as we know our ethical code. They're very straightforward, very black and white. That's the great thing about the ethical questions on the exam. They're black and white. In this case, we're talking about continuing providing services in the case of funding or payment being stopped. And we recently did a question like this in our practice exam or our practice question series. So in this case, you say you provide services for 30 days if there's interruptions. So that's in the contract. You have to do that. But they just hit the 30-day point and still can't provide payment. So as the owner of the company and the behavior analyst, what do we do in this situation? Do we need to continue providing services? A, yes, you should never abandon clients. That is true. We never abandon clients, right? That is one of our fundamental ethical codes. However, in this case, we've given a 30-day notice. We've provided services for 30 days. It's in the contract. We no longer can provide services because there's no funding. We're not abandoning it, right? Abandoning the client. So A is not it. B, yes, you cannot punish the client for insufficient funding. In a perfect world, that will be true. And you're not punishing them per se. There's just no way around it, right? There's no funding for services. How do you provide those services? Okay. So in a perfect world, B would be true. But in this case, it's just not, right? You've given the 30-day notice. They can't come up with funding. You don't have to provide services any longer. So B, no, or C, no, you can choose to end services is the answer we're looking for. What about D? No, you cannot continue services even if you wanted to. You absolutely can. If you want to provide services for an extended period of time while they come up with payment or funding, you have that right. But do you have to? No, you have the choice to end services. It's in the contract. You've given sufficient notice. They still can't pay. Now, as the behavior analyst, as the owner, you can make the choice to discontinue services. 112, 2 behavior analysts would like to conduct research on the impact of play-based instruction on a group of 4-year-olds in their clinic. The parents give informed consent and agree to participation, but the 4-year-olds say they do not want to do the project. What should the behavior analyst do? Okay, interesting question here. It is a consent versus a assent question. Now, most of us know what informed consent is and why we need it, right? Assent, however, is often misunderstood and sometimes not very well known. Assent is simply given by people or children who can't give consent. So in our case, it's typically our kids under 18. They don't necessarily give consent, right? But they give assent. It's their agreement to participate. In this case, we have some 4-year-olds who don't want to do the project. Their parents gave informed consent. The 4-year-olds say, I don't want to do this. So what do we do as behavior analysts? A, start the research. The parents gave informed consent. Well, that's not enough because we're not doing the research on the parents. We're doing the research on the 4-year-olds. And we cannot conduct research on them against their will. B, start the research, but continue to try and obtain consent from the 4-year-olds. You're not looking for consent from the 4-year-olds. What you're looking for is assent, and you have to know the difference, okay? I know that's very pedantic, right, and picky, but it is the difference in our code, okay? So you have to understand consent versus assent. C, do not start research until assent is given from participants. Yes, we have to get agreements from the 4-year-olds. If they're not going to agree, we have to find different participants. They have rights too. D, research should not be done on children this young regardless of consent. Not true, right? We conduct research on all ages as long as we have assent, as long as they agree to allow us to conduct the research. So our answer here is going to be C, do not start research until assent is given from participants. 113, a teacher designs a classroom management plan for use in her general education room. She includes several behavioral components such as differential reinforcement and extinction. She is sick one day and the substitute successfully uses the management plan in the classroom and at recess. What dimension of ABA is not featured in this description? All right, kind of a different look at these dimension questions, which tend to give people some trouble. All right, so we're looking at our 7 dimensions, which you should know. And this one is asking what is not featured. Okay, so 3 of these will be featured in here and 1 won't. Well, let's break it down. Let's try to predict it. Okay, so we have a teacher designing a management plan. Great. She includes several behavioral components. Okay, to me, that makes it conceptually systematic, right? Differential reinforcement, extinction. She is sick one day and the substitute successfully uses the management plan in the classroom and at recess. So if the substitute can successfully use the plan behind her, it makes it what? Well, technological, right? Because technological says we write things in a way that are repeatable. And then she's able to use it in the classroom and at recess, making it generalizable. Okay, so we're looking for one of those or another dimension that we haven't mentioned. So A, technological. Well, the fact that the substitute can use the management plan makes it technological. The fact that the substitute can use it in the classroom and at recess makes it generalizable. Is it analytic? Are we demonstrating any functional control here, right? Any experimental control? Well, not necessarily. We don't know anything about the behaviors we're targeting or anything about the students, okay? It's all about the plan. So we can't necessarily say it's analytic because we can't for sure say we have any functional control or instructional control over anything. Conceptually systematic because we're using behavioral components like differential reinforcement and extinction. So the dimension that is not featured in this description is going to be analytic. The dimension questions can be a little tricky, right? Don't rush through them. Really break it down and make sure you're identifying what is and isn't present. Okay, you don't want to miss these questions. They're pretty easy. They just take a little work up front. So what dimension of ABA is not featured? Well, analytic. 114, which of the following is untrue about partial interval recording? Okay, we're looking for something that is untrue, right? And then we're going to look at partial interval recording. So what is partial interval recording? Well, we take our interval, and if the behavior occurs at any point, we record it, right? So we're looking for something that's untrue about that type of measurement. A, it tends to underestimate the rate of high count behavior. Now, is this true? So think about it. If we have a high count behavior, so behavior that's happening very often, what is our data going to show as far as partial interval recording goes? Well, it's only going to show one data point for each interval, even if that behavior happens 8 times. So it will underestimate the rate. What about overestimating total duration? Sure, because if we have a 20-second interval, again, that data point is just going to indicate that the response happened. Okay, it's not going to give an accurate look at duration. C, there are more sensitive measures available compared to partial interval recording. Absolutely, right? Because partial interval recording is discontinuous. If we use a continuous measurement system, it's much more sensitive. And then D, it tends to overestimate the rate of high count behavior. This is not true, right? Because it underestimates the rate. So it can't overestimate and underestimate. So since it underestimates, it can't overestimate. D is untrue about partial interval recording. 115, last week while cooking, Timothy inhaled black pepper. At the same time, a car alarm went off in the background. Now, Timothy sneezes when he hears a car alarm. How would this be put on respondent extinction? So it's giving you information up front that this is a respondent question, and we should know that, right? Because we have a sneeze, a reflex. So what is our respondent pairing going on? What was paired together? Well, Timothy inhaled black pepper, okay, which is assuming our unconditioned stimuli. Then the car alarm went off, which was the neutral stimuli. Now Timothy sneezes when he hears a car alarm. So the car alarm became the conditioned stimulus, and the sneezing became the conditioned reflex in response to the car alarm. So now we have to put this car alarm on respondent extinction. How do we do that? Well, with respondent extinction, you need to to take the conditioned stimulus and present it over and over again until the conditioned reflex no longer occurs. In other words, we need to present the car alarm not in the presence of the black pepper until Timothy no longer sneezes in the presence of the car alarm. So again, take the conditioned stimulus without the unconditioned stimulus and present it until the conditioned reflex no longer occurs. So that's what we're looking for. So how do we put it on respondent extinction? A, identify the function of sneezing. Do we identify controlling functions and consequences in respondent conditioning? We don't, right? Respondent conditioning is simply a SR, okay? We're not worried about functions and consequences. B, withhold the car alarm while presenting the black pepper until sneezing does not occur. This is the opposite, okay? You want to withhold the unconditioned stimulus and present the conditioned stimulus. C, present the car alarm without the black pepper until sneezing does not occur. Good, okay? And we want to present the conditioned stimulus until it's no longer conditioned. That's respondent extinction. And then D, the function of behavior is automatic. You must withhold sensory stimulation reinforcement. Again, we're looking at respondent conditioning. We're not worried about functions. What we're going to do is present the conditioned stimulus without the unconditioned stimulus until the reflex no longer occurs. 116, which of the following answer choices does not represent a fundamental dimensional quantity of behavior? Now, easy question if you know your dimensional quantities of behavior. So let's name our dimensional quantities of behavior. We have repeatability, which derives to things like frequency. We have temporal locus, okay, which derives to things like IRT. And then we have temporal extent, which derives to things like duration. Those are dimensional quantities of behavior. So all we're going to do is choose the answer choice that does not meet one of those three quantities. And if we look at A, topography, that's our answer, right? Topography is not a dimensional quantity of behavior. Temporal locus is, and repeatability is, topography isn't. Pretty easy question, right? I would say a 2 or a 3. When we get easy questions on the exam, we don't overthink it. We trust our preparation. Pick the best answer. Move. Before using a timeout procedure, what should be a priority for the practitioner? So we know timeout procedures are punishment procedures. And whenever we use a punishment procedure, there are steps we need to take before we implement that punishment procedure. So as the practitioner, what is our priority for using punishment? A, understand the legal and ethical ramifications of timeout. Absolutely, right? There are things that govern timeout usage, especially if you're using an exclusionary timeout procedure. So A is something you have to do with any punishment procedure, really. So A looks good. Do we pick A and move on? No, we read every single answer choice. B, attempt to use positive reductive procedures first. Absolutely. We always start here before jumping to things like timeout. And then C, establish a monitoring system. Absolutely. We always have a monitoring system in place for punishment. Okay. Monitoring progress, monitoring how it's being implemented. Punishment can be very dangerous. We have to really accept and embrace that fact. If we're going to use punishment, we have to watch it very, very closely. So before you can use timeout, you have to understand the legal and ethical ramifications. You need to attempt positive reductive procedures first, and you must establish a monitoring system. So what do we prioritize? Well, D, all of the above. Halloween, Thanksgiving, and Christmas are your favorite holidays. However, you never listen to Christmas music before Christmas season begins. But when December 1st arrives, you listen to Christmas music on repeat for 25 straight days. December 1st represents what in relation to listening to music? All right, kind of a convoluted question. So let's take our time. We don't jump straight to answer choices. We do all our work up front. We're looking at December 1st in relation to music. So we know you have favorite holidays, which are irrelevant. However, you never listen to Christmas music before it begins. When December 1st arrives, all of a sudden you start listening to music. So what does December 1st represent? So if we look at our answer choices now, we have motivating operations and discriminative stimulus. And that's going to be what we're looking at, right? Is it an MO? Is it an SD? Well, we know MOs do what? MOs increase or decrease the value of consequences. It basically makes you want or not want something. SDs signals the consequence is available. Now, Christmas music is available to you year round, right? You can listen to Christmas music at any point. However, only when December 1st arrives do you begin listening to Christmas music. What does December 1st do to that Christmas music? It makes it more valuable, right? It increases the value of the Christmas music. It's a motivating operation, an establishing operation for Christmas music. The value of the consequence is much, much higher. Christmas music is always available year round, but only when December 1st comes around does the value increase, making you want it more, right? And evoking the behavior of listening to Christmas music. So December 1st is simply an MO. It isn't a prompt, right? We're not prompting you. December 1st isn't prompting you to listen to the music, and it isn't a consequence because it's an antecedent. December 1st represents a motivating operation in relation to listening to music. 119, a 3-year-old is starting to develop more spontaneous language and often repeats what he hears at home and on the television. Yesterday, at the park, he started saying out loud things he saw while walking. At the park, the 3-year-old is engaging in what? Okay, the key here is at the park, right? Because we know at home, what is he doing? Well, he's repeating what he hears at home and on television. So immediately you read that and you probably think, okay, echoic. And what happens if you rush is you're going to jump to the answer choices and just pick echoics. But the question isn't asking about that. It's asking about at the park. And at the park, he's saying out loud things he sees while walking. He's essentially labeling things he sees while walking. So what is he doing at the park? A, echoics. He's not repeating at the park, okay? So it's not echoics. Is he making requests at the park? Well, no, he's just saying out loud things he sees. Is he responding? Is he engaging in interverbals? No, again, all he's doing is seeing something, labeling it. Nonverbal SD, evoking verbal behavior. He is tacting. He's simply labeling it. This is an easy question, but you can't rush. You can't just read, okay, well, he's repeating what he hears at home, must be echoics. You've got to go slowly. You don't want to miss the easy ones, okay? But what they're going to test you on is, are you going to analyze? Are you going to slow down, okay? Are you going to pick the best answer? And then 120, complete the following sentence. The momentary effectiveness of any stimulus change as reinforcement depends on an existing level of what with respect to that stimulus change. Okay, direct definition, right? The momentary effectiveness of any stimulus change is reinforcement. So how effective the reinforcement is depends on an existing level of what? What makes reinforcement more or less effective? Well, we just talked about it on 118, right? The motivation level is altering momentary effectiveness of reinforcement. That's what MOs do. They increase the value or decrease the value. So the momentary effectiveness of any stimulus change as reinforcement depends on an existing level of prompting. No, prompting doesn't change the value of the reinforcer. Motivation changes the value of the reinforcer. It isn't learning history. It isn't contingency. We're looking at momentary effectiveness. And momentary effectiveness of the value of reinforcement is influenced by motivation. Fantastic. Thank you for watching. Make sure you check out behavioranalyststudy.com. Please subscribe. When you pass, let us know so we can include you in the Sunday shout out. Other than that, let's work hard, study hard. See you soon.